Now first off, there's some material that didn't make the cut for this review. I put it all into one video, labeled it bonus content, and linked it up here. So if you're interested, might as well want to check that out. Now, EOS M3 versus EOS M6. It's double the money, but is it really twice as good for what you want to do with it? You'll know by the end of this video. Now this is a pretty long multi-part review, so should you be interested in only one or several of the chapters, check out the video description, there's links to all the individual parts. Now this is just me skating down the sidewalk on a sunny afternoon. And as you can see, as long as my person is the area of highest contrast within the image, both cameras have no problem locking focus on my face. But of course, in an outside scenario where you have no control over the lighting, this can change rapidly, like you're seeing right now. That situation still doesn't present a problem to the dual pixel AF of the M6. Unfortunately, that's not the case for the M3, having lost focus on my face and now being stuck to the background. Now here's another example where the M6 just keeps doing its job well, but the M3 again is stuck to the background. If lighting situations change into a more preferable scenario for the M3 AF, it has no problem locking onto my face. And in this case, stays locked onto it until the end of the shot, although again we're running into some difficult situations when it comes to autofocus performance during the shot. Unfortunately, the AF being stuck to the background rather than having locked onto my face, although lighting situations were pretty good that day, throughout the day was a problem I encountered relatively often, especially compared to the dual pixel AF, which pretty much never had that problem. Also, sometimes in high key scenarios like the one you're seeing right now, where the differences in contrast are relatively low throughout the image, sometimes the M3 just doesn't know what to focus on at all, having you end up with a completely out of focus image. Now this is me being behind the M3 in bright daylight trying to pull off a more cinematic shot, and unfortunately this is the only one I almost got exactly the way I wanted it, before the camera messed up focusing back to infinity and started focus hunting, which is something that occurred quite often unfortunately. I was hoping for better performance, the M3 having a hybrid system with at least some face detection, but I had to learn that for the AF system to pick up on changes they have to be drastic. Like if you want to have objects move into the frame that are somewhat more foreground objects but not super close to the camera and will stay peripheral to the whole image, the M3 very rarely does pick up on that and focus on it. Also sometimes, though very rarely, the AF system just doesn't seem to react at all. Overall, being behind the camera, not having the help of face recognition, trying to pull off cinematic shots that are taxing, it will take you some time to get them down right with the EOS M3. Now the M6 having of course the far advanced AF system, with this test literally gave me 100%. There wasn't a single shot that was unusable. Sometimes was a little slower picking up on peripheral objects entering the frame than other times, but never did I not get a usable shot. The biggest differences in performance concerning the autofocus systems you're going to see in low-light situations. Almost all the time, the M3 ran into problems with either drifting focus, or focus being stuck to the background. The M6's dual pixel AF just pulled through and delivered. Also, the M3 hybrid autofocus system, come nighttime, is distractible too easily, like we can see in this example. Both cameras did just fine until the lights went on in the background. The M3's like, hey, this looks interesting, it's certainly high contrast, so let's focus on it. Whereas the M6 is more like, come on, it's like the oldest trick in the book, I'm not falling for that. Also, when it comes to overall autofocus speed, the dual pixel AF of the M6 is definitely a tad faster than the hybrid system of the M3. In this example, both cameras are stationary and all I'm doing is leaving the frame. The M6 picks up on that and has to focus where it belongs even before I've left frame completely. The M3 basically starts looking for where to focus once I've left the frame, and we do see some focus hunting until it finally seems like it sets the focus correctly, which unfortunately isn't the case. It's just slightly off focus, as we can see in the stark comparison with the footage from the M6. Now as soon as I return with the M6, there's the focus. At the very same time, the M3 is on its way, but not there yet. It takes it another couple of frames until it hits focus. Doesn't look like it because my head's moving, but it's actually true if you look at the top of my Joby Gorilla Pod on the back. Also, what I've come to notice is that a stationary position and the subject moving back and forth helps the face detection of the hybrid autofocus system of the M3, because otherwise some AF performances just could not be explained, when definitely the background has the higher contrast and my face is like all dark. Normally I'd say there's no way the M3 is able to focus on my face. It still does pull that off, and I believe the reason for that is that I'm closing into the camera and the face detection picks up on that movement. Now in low light with the M6, the only problem I ran into was focus drifting. It does sometimes occur, and during the time I did test shoot the M6, it always took care of the problem, relocking focus pretty fast. Now in low light, low contrast situations at night, being behind the M3 trying to pull off a more complex shot isn't fun at all. I threw this together especially to force the camera to pull focus from infinity to or near the close limit and back again. Of course, this is a taxing situation and a shot that's comprised of different parts where a lot of things can go wrong. Unfortunately, a lot of things, a lot of the time, did go wrong. So with the M3, you're lucky if you're getting 10% of your shots down right in a timely fashion. It literally took me 10 minutes to get this shot. Now with the M6, basically everything was reversed. I got the shot down exactly the way I wanted it to, like within the first 3 takes. Still, I continued on for 10 minutes because that's what I did with the M3, and basically 90 to 95% of the time, I got the shot down exactly the way I wanted it. There were a couple of occasions, for example when trying to focus back to infinity, where the M6 did run into problems. And very rarely there was some focus hunting in very low contrast situations. But apart from that, awesome performance of the M6's dual pixel AF for sure. Now before I cast too dark a shadow over the hybrid CMOS autofocus 3 system of the M3, if you look at it by itself like I did in this video, it is actually not that bad. Like 80 to 90% of the time it will deliver shooting in good lighting conditions. But as you've also seen in the past couple of minutes, if you're shooting in difficult lighting situations, it has a tendency to let you down. Now this is the kind of quality you can expect using the internal audio of both the M6 and the M3. If you want to use either of those cameras for vlogging, then you're going to run into at least 2 problems using the internal audio only. Number 1, wind noise. Problem number 2, the directional quality of the audio. What the internal mics try to do is kind of gather a surround profile of the ambience, whereas what you need when vlogging is a mic that has directional quality, which will do a far better job in picking up your voice when you're talking into a camera, making it louder, clearer, and to some degree excluding surround sounds. So let's put on some external audio setups to give you an idea of how much of a difference it makes in a studio-like environment like this. So this time I'm using external audio setups built around the Attitude ETM008 mini directional microphone. And as you're hearing already, it's quite a difference and quite a step up in audio quality when compared to the internal mics. Hissing, by the way, is a problem with both these cameras, a little more so with the EOS M3 than with the EOS M6 when you're shooting in a very silent, a studio-like environment like this. If I stop talking, hiss is quite noticeable on the EOS M3 and a little less so on the EOS M6, but it is still there. It also depends on what kind of mic you're using. The ETM008, for example, is a very good mic to control hiss on both the M6, the M3, or any kind of M-series camera. But of course, the scenarios where you are going to benefit most from using external audio is when you're vlogging outside in, say, suboptimal conditions for audio recording. Alright, worst case scenario for audio recording. We directly beneath the subway overpass with traffic hitting us right there. Let's put on external setups on both these cameras and see how much of an increase in audio quality we'll get from that. Now this is what you're getting from external audio setups. Both cameras are manually leveled to selfie distance, and as you're hearing already, the 2 problems from before are actually much less of a problem right now. Wind noise for the most part is being dealt with by the dead cats both these setups come with, so even in a windy situation you're going to have usable audio, except if wind is picking up too much, then there's just limits to what these dead cats can do for us. This time both the microphones are directional microphones. They're built especially so they do a far better job at picking up your voice when you're talking to a camera, and overall making it a much nicer experience for your viewers to listen to your audio. For this low-light comparison, I used the 15-45 kit lens at 15mm on both bodies. I extended the ISO via the custom functions menu and I turned the D+ setting off. This way both cameras started at an ISO level of 100. They move up all the way to 3200 with exactly the same steps. Then the M6 gives you an additional 4000 and 5000 level on the way to the 6400 ISO level, whereas the M3 just jumps from 3200 to 6400. Also the M6 has the higher max ISO with a level of 12800. The highest comparable ISO is 6400, so let's take a look at that. Detail and sharpness in the shadowy parts of the image look just about the same, Now when it comes to highlight handling, both cameras are doing an okay job. The highlights are somewhat overexposed, but still within a decent range given the extremely high ISO level. And as we can see, the M3 actually does a little bit better than the M6. We retain more detail, and also the highlights are a little less overexposed. Comparing noise levels at ISO 6400, the M6 does give us a slightly brighter image, but also more digital noise. Sharpness and detail in the shadowy areas of the image in this comparison are pretty much equal. Now, digital image stabilization can be a little confusing looking at the menus only. Baseline is this. With both cameras you can turn it completely off, use lens stabilization only, or use digital image stabilization. Right now I'm walking at a mellow pace, and this is what you're getting from the 15-45 at 15mm and the 18-55 at 18mm. So now let's check out what lens stabilization can do for us, because it's pretty much the best mode to be in. Now this is what you're getting using lens stabilization only, and it's a purely optical image stabilization. So the camera does not crop into the image and you're not losing viewing angle. For vlogging, it's pretty much the best setting because it's all benefits, no downsides. You're getting a more stable shot, plus you're not losing viewing angle. Now this is the first level of digital image stabilization on the M6 and the only level of digital image stabilization on the M3. This time the cameras do crop into the image, so the trade-in for a more smoother shot is a loss in viewing angle. And if you're vlogging, that might not be what you're after. So really think twice before using digital image stabilization. Now the only difference when it comes to stabilization between the M6 and the M3 is the second level of digital image stabilization you're looking at right now. And again, think twice, 3 times, 4 times or 5 times before using this mode when vlogging, because you are going to lose a lot of viewing angle. So maybe if you're behind the camera and you need a really steady or smooth shot, maybe the trade-in is worth it. But for vlogging, in my mind, using the kit lens, you're losing too much viewing angle. Of course, you could compensate for the fact that the camera crops into the image by using super wide angles. So what you're looking at right now on the M6 is second level digital image stabilization, but with my 10-18 adapted via the EFS to EFM adapter at 10mm. So this way, although you're using digital image stabilization, even the second level, you are still getting a decent viewing angle. Okay, let's do a quick viewing angle comparison between the standard kit lenses and some others. What you're looking at on the EOS M6 currently is the 15-45 STM-M lens, which is the standard kit lens the M6 ships with. So essentially, you're getting 3 more millimeters on the wide end while sacrificing 10mm on the tele end, compared to the 18-55, which is the standard kit lens the EOS M3 used to ship with. Now you can also get the M3 with the 15-45. If you're into vlogging and you want to go with the kit lens, definitely go with the 15-45, because for vlogging, the wider you can go, the better. And the 15mm is the most narrow of the wide angles. I would still consider a decent choice to vlog with. Now of course you don't have to go kit lens, you could also go body only and buy a lens separately. Now this is what you're getting from the 11-22 at 11mm, and pretty much this is what I would call a perfect angle to vlog with. In direct comparison to the 15-45, which is in my opinion still a decent angle to vlog with, I think quite simply the 11mm is where it's at. Because, and I keep repeating myself, vlogging is you and the world, the dynamics that shape that relationship. And of course a great visual representation of that is accomplished by the super wide angle, because it quite simply shows a lot of the world around you with yourself in center. Darling, now with both cameras you can do cool time lapses. With the M3 though, you have to go old school, just letting the camera roll. Whereas with the M6 you're getting a dedicated time lapse mode that unfortunately in my opinion is a little crippled, because it works via presets only, not giving you full manual controls. Still, you are going to save quite some SD card space using the M6 time-lapse mode, because it basically constructs the time-lapse from the stills taken in camera. So you're going to end up with a 10, 20, 30 or whatever second clip on your SD card, whereas with the M3, that's a 10, 20, 30 or whatever minute clip you're going to have to record. That's going to take up a lot more space. Now first off, you're going to pay extra for 2 things when it comes to the EOS M6. Forget about image stabilization, forget about the time-lapse mode, forget about edit menu items. Dual pixel autofocus and fluid motion with the 1080p 60 video mode is where it's at. Now whether to get or not to get largely depends on your circumstances, I believe. If you're on a budget, you're shooting under good lighting conditions and all you want to do is vlogging, go save yourself some $450 and get an M3. If you're on a budget, you're shooting under good lighting conditions, you want to vlog and also work from behind the camera, save up some more money and get an M6. If you're on a budget, you're shooting shooting under good lighting conditions and low light conditions, and what you want to do is vlogging, again, my recommendation would be save up more money and get an M6. Especially in low light conditions, the dual pixel autofocus system makes quite a significant difference in autofocus performance. If you're on a budget, you're shooting under good lighting conditions and low light conditions, and what you want to do is vlogging, and in addition to this, work quite a bit from behind the camera, definitely get an M6. You will be far happier, believe me. Now, if you're on a budget and you got an old M3 to sell, that's a deal I would definitely make. In fact, it's exactly the deal I am going to make myself. Selling off my old M3, for which I can still get like 300 to 350, which would then drop the price point of a brand new M6 to around 600 bucks, which, if that was the actual price point, would be quite the decent deal. And if you're not on a budget, get the M6. As of now, 2017, I don't think there's any camera around that's better suited to vlogging than the Canon EOS M6. Small form factor, interchangeable lens mount system, flip up touchscreen, high quality external audio via the setups featured on this channel and linked up here, decent wide angle kit lens, fluid motion with 1080p 60 video, and no overheating. That's a pretty damn good package for vlogging. So if you liked the video, please make sure to leave a thumbs up. It'd be greatly appreciated. Any kind of comment or feedback is welcome, and I'll try to answer as quickly as possible. In any case, as always, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for watching, and hopefully see you again soon.